Mr. Chairman, and welcome back to your native New York. I'd like to ask you a question in your former capacity as, did I say Mr. Chairman? Because
It's okay, I'm used to that.
I was a former SEC litigator, that's why. And my question is a little bit related to that. You know, Philippines has a notoriety for corruption, and you did mention about the law and order and corruption. But let me tell you that here in the United States, when we execute this question, do you know that in the exam, Philippines is the #1 example of political risk and corruption across the board in security series 6, 7, 65, and I really feel bad when I see that in the exam. So, how do you propose to rise above such notoriety where in your capacity as a representative of the Philippines, we want to deal with foreign investors, and yet we do know what happens in the SEC. A simple TRO that ripens into an injunction can turn a multi-million-dollar investment into a white elephant. Because this is corruption. How do we rise above that? This is for the inquirers.
Well, thank you for your question. Yeah. We have now, for the first time, a president who has shown us the political will to ensure that the fight against corruption will succeed. In the past, many candidates stood on the platform of eliminating corruption, proclaiming almost routinely that when they get elected, they will fight corruption and eliminate it. And then getting elected, they become part of the corruption problem. President Duterte was a reluctant candidate for president. He did not want to run. He was happy in the prospects of retiring after serving his term as mayor of Davao. But because of the popular clamor for him to run, he started a campaign showing the kind of person he is, displaying without any hypocrisy his strengths and his weakness. Let me say, weaknesses. But the people appreciated him. The people loved him for who he is. He spoke straight. He meant what he said. Never minced any words, including using expletives to dramatize his point. But you see, our people in general did not listen to the words that he said, did not listen to the expletives that he uttered, but listened to the message of hope and change that he had offered. And it was because of this, talking tough against the fight against illegal drugs, or in the fight against illegal drugs, and making the promise that he will not stop, making the promise that he was even willing to lose his life, his honor, and the presidency, if only to demonstrate that political will to succeed. Quite frankly, despite the kind of president that we have and the cabinet members that he has chosen on the basis of their honesty, integrity, and dedication without any hidden agenda, I will assure you that we will not be able to succeed unless we have the support of the people. And with your firm commitment and support, notwithstanding the criticisms that we have received here and abroad, for as long as we stand proud together as Filipinos, committed to make sure that corruption will be finally eradicated and eliminated, I am positive and I am confident that this is how we will succeed.
Another question, sir, from Filipino Express. So this question is from my editor, Filipino Express. Comparing the foreign policy of the past administration, how does it differ from your independent foreign policy? And corollary to that, considering your professional background, how will it help to implement your independent foreign policy?
Again, thank you for that very important question. The Constitution is the fundamental law that defines the foreign policy of the country. That does not change unless you amend the Constitution. And what does the Constitution say? We pursue an independent foreign policy for the purpose of carrying out the paramount national interests. And in so doing, we must uphold our sovereignty, our territorial integrity, and the people's right for self-determination. And above all, we renounce war as an instrument of national policy, and we promote amity amongst all nations. This has been the policy laid out by the fundamental law since we adopted the Constitution of the Philippines as it is today. The problem was carrying out that independent foreign policy, independent foreign relations has not been pursued in the manner contemplated. We had always been subservient to some foreign country in carrying out that foreign policy. But what did the President say, and how will he make a difference in claiming that we will now proceed with an independent foreign policy? It simply means, and he simply meant, that we will carry out an independent foreign policy in that the paramount national interests will be always pursued and not compromised. Now we know that in maintaining amity with all nations, especially even in pursuing and strengthening further our traditional partners and ally, we will have mutual interests that will converge. And when we have this convergence of mutual interests, an independent foreign policy requires that we pursue this to the hilt for the mutual benefit of the countries concerned. This is what we plan to do. The difference between the previous administration was, for instance, in pursuing the paramount national interest with respect, for instance, to the South China Sea. We did so by alienating another nation when we did not have to. We did so by showing a bias and preference for another nation when we did not have so. An independent foreign policy does not mean that if we forge closer friendship with China, we will be weakening our friendship with the United States. No. In the South China Sea, for instance, we already won in the arbitral tribunal insofar as our claim that the 200-mile exclusive economic zone in that area covered in the South China Sea is indeed ours, and we are entitled to the maritime resources, both living and non-living, in that area to exclusively exploit and utilize for our people. We set, or the arbitral tribunal's decision provided for the legal platform that strengthened the legal basis for our claim and serves as a basis for us to now move forward with the diplomatic processes to make sure that the decision of the arbitral tribunal would be implemented. We know that the arbitral tribunal does not have any enforcement capacity, and the 1982 United Nations Law of the Seas requires that in the implementation we will have to resort to agreements with the other claimants, and therefore it is important that we engage our country in bilateral talks to make sure that we can come up with these agreements or a code of conduct under which we would be able to peacefully settle our disputes. Let there be no doubt that it is not easy to settle our disputes with China with respect to the West Philippine Sea. They claim that the territory is theirs. They claim that they will not talk to us if we will talk to them within the confines of the decision of the arbitral tribunal or outside of the framework of the arbitral tribunal, and we say we will only talk to them eventually within the framework of that ruling. But we also know that we will fight and defend our rights insofar as our exclusive economic zone is concerned, and we will not allow anybody to prevent us from utilizing the living and resources there for our own exclusive benefit. But this is only a small portion of our relationship with China. There are other relationships that must be pursued and strengthened, such as trade, investment, even cultural exchanges, people-to-people contact, and so on, that we must pursue in the national interest without eroding our entitlements under our exclusive economic zone. And this is exactly what we are doing. Nobody and no country can dictate on us on how to do this. That is precisely why we do not want to engage any other nations in a so-called multilateral talks, because insofar as our exclusive economic zone in the South China Sea is concerned, there are only two claimants. There are no other claimants. It is the Philippines and China. So why will you include third parties? You will just confuse and make more complicated and complex the peaceful settlement. No one wants to engage in war in the settlement of disputes. Even China does not want to engage the Philippines in war insofar as the dispute in the China Sea is concerned, South China Sea is concerned, in the same manner that we will never engage anybody, because this is what our Constitution prohibits us from doing. Moreover, we can never win against any superpower. But we have agreements with the United States. In fact, we have a treaty which says that any attack on Philippine territory or any attack on a public vessel of the Philippines will be an attack on the United States territory or public vessel. So, if we engage ourselves in the patrol by ourselves of that area in the South China Sea, including Scarborough Shoal, to make sure that our fishermen and our interests are protected, we have to do this alone, and if our ships are fired upon, the Mutual Defense Treaty Agreement of the United States will come into play. And that is how we will protect ourselves. But we will not fire the first shot. So this is how we would like to carry that independent foreign policy. And I hope we will not be influenced by irrationality or our emotions in claiming, sa atin yan, paglaban natin yan, gegerahin natin, alis kayo dyan. This is not the way we settle international disputes. And I would like for you to dissociate from your minds in claiming that because we won the case before the arbitral tribunal, that we can in fact do so and drive out anyone who is there. No, that is not how it works. Under the 1982 UNCLOS, we still have to engage ourselves in negotiations, in bilateral talks to make sure that the decision of the arbitral tribunal can be implemented. Thank you.
Good evening, Secretary Yasay. Christina Pastor po from the Philam. How do you explain President Duterte's colorful personality before the international community? And do you find it challenging that instead of explaining policy, you explain personality quirks?
Well, President Rodrigo Duterte is a unique person, as every person is unique. I do not know in what context one would say that he is a colorful personality. Certainly it's not the color of his skin. But the only reason, I guess, why that is being said is because he oftentimes uses expletives. Yeah. But I do not have to explain what Mr. Duterte means when he uses his expletives, in order to say that these are always uttered in anger, frustration, and disappointment. And these are not directed at any personality or any particular person. And in fact, the persons many accuse the President Duterte as having directed his expletives have said, no, they're not bothered by the expletives that President Duterte has uttered. Not even the Pope, not even President Barack Obama. So I have nothing to explain. Public policy is clear. When the President says we will have no joint patrol in the area of the South China Sea, he only means that because that area that is outside of our 12-mile territorial limit is still international waters, anybody can patrol that area. The United States can patrol that area, China can patrol that area, Japan can patrol that area, because these are international waters, and the interests of these nations, like our interests, separate from our exclusive economic zone, is that we would like to keep the sea lanes there free from navigation and overflight operations. So they can do that. But for us to have a joint patrol of that area as if we are siding with another country in defense of that international waters is a provocative act, which we would not want to do. So nobody is preventing the United States in patrolling that area. Nobody is preventing China in patrolling that area, and the rest of the countries that I have mentioned. But this, you must bear in mind, that because of our treaty agreement with the United States, that we are bound to respect. We will continue to have joint exercises Not necessarily in that area. Even in our land area, these joint exercises would happen. And this will continue because this is part of our commitment, this is part of our agreement. And we are not driving any country or nationals of our country out of our territory on the basis of carrying out an independent foreign policy. Thank you.
Hi, Secretary Don Tagala from Balitang America. Through the years, we've seen how the diplomats from Washington, D.C. and New York really work hard in building relationships with the business community here, bringing in foreign investors to the Philippines, and creating jobs. So recently, based on the data coming from the Philippine Stock Exchange, there's been a lot of foreign investors who's pulled out billions of pesos or billions of dollars in terms of investment. And the peso dropped, and the PSC index dropped by 4.48. And according to the research that they've done, and these are all because of the expletives or the colorful remarks or what are perceived to be anti-US or anti-EU remarks that was made by the president. So how are you addressing this, and how do you think we can bring those investors back? Those are foreign investors.
Well, first and foremost, let me first say that the Philippine Stock Exchange inflow of investment there, which are portfolio investments, short-term investments, and the outflow investments, have always been very volatile in that it is subject to any what do you call this, a fact, event, or information that will create uncertainty. But I know this, and I hope you will understand that I'm speaking as former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Much of this talk about, there is an investment pull out in the country, in the stock exchange because of, let's say, Duterte's remarks. Believe me, these are just excuses for profit taking. There is still much to do about our Philippine stock exchange or stock market or securities market in making it transparent, efficient, and dependable, so that you would have people who go to our markets confident that when they place their investments there, even if it is supposed to be a short-term investment, they go there because of their commitment of the business environment in the stock market. I need not tell you about the good or bad situations. Some people, they put their money when the value of the peso is what do you call this, is low, so that their dollars would be able to buy more stocks than usual. But they do this for purposes of making sure that